The following program is a presentation of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which is solely responsible for its content and does not necessarily reflect the views of this station.
Welcome to Free Thought Matters. I'm Dan Barker.
I'm Annie Laurie Gaylor. We're co-presidents of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, a state church watchdog with more than 32,000 free-thinking members, and we hope you'll join us.
Did you know there are actually atheists in the pulpit? I used to be one for a while. Our guest today, Carter Warden, was a pastor of an East Tennessee church when he stopped believing in God.
And like you, Dan, he needed to find an exit strategy from the ministry. While he was still preaching, Carter Warden became a founding member and organizer of the Clergy Project. He came out publicly as an atheist at FFRF's National Convention in 2016. He's now working at East Tennessee State University.
So Carter Warden, welcome to Free Thought Matters.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you finally saw the light after, how long did you preach?
I was in ministry at that point almost 20 years when the downhill demise began, according to some.
So you were a senior pastor and a music director?
When I was not senior, associate pastor, mainly in charge of worship and administration for the church.
Wow.
So you were brought up in a religious family, I assume?
Yes. Brought up in the United Methodist Church, attended as youth, elementary and youth, sang in the choirs and all that. But I transitioned during high school over to the Christian Church, Church of Christ, where my wife-to-be was a member, and so and we were very involved in that.
Is that the non-instrumental group?
No, we were the instrumental group, although there is a non-instrumental version.
I know some of those pastors. There's no piano, there's no music at all. For some reason, it's supposed to be against God's law to have music in the church.
That's their interpretation of the New Testament. Yeah.
But you're very musical.
Yes, I couldn't function in a non-instrumental church.
So when did you feel that you had a calling to the ministry?
You know, I don't know that I felt like I had a particular calling or an event, but I just saw the good things that were happening in the church and working with youth, and I just, was looking for a purpose, I guess, more than just working. I was an auto mechanic by trade and was working in that before I decided to go back to school into the ministry.
So did you have a seminary training? Or?
Yes, yeah. Undergraduate degree as a Bible major and sociology minor, and then began working in the church because the Christian Church, Church of Christ, does not require that you have a seminary degree. But after a few years, I wanted more education, and so I went back to seminary for a master's, and then continued in ministry.
Well, because the pastor is supposed to know these things, right? People come to you for answers.
That's true.
So I hear a lot from people who say, well, Dan, if you left the ministry and left the faith, it's because you really didn't believe in the first place. What do you say about it? Were you a real believer or were you faking it?
Well, it was, I look back at it now, I mean, church was all-encompassing. As a pastor, I mean, not just the job responsibilities, but your whole world revolves around it. I mean, I had literally, prayed and given myself, my family, my wife and I were kind of joining ministry as partners, and we were just completely trusting, God to take care of us, and went through several financial hard times, trusting God, and it never did not work out really.
So you were not faking it. You were praying.
No,
you were actually talking to somebody in your mind and getting answers and feeling. Did you feel the Holy Spirit and all that?
Feeling that I had answers.
Yeah.
As I look back at it, and then we were very involved in music, and we would take youth to a lot of the Christian rock concerts, which were very controversial at the time. But during that time, we began kind of checking out the Pentecostal movement a little bit, and there was a while when I was, thinking I was missing out on the Holy Spirit and the praying in tongues.
The charismatic movement.
Dabbling with the charismatic movement, and then was in that for maybe 1 year, and then came back to a little more conservative. But when I saw that it was me making myself believe that.
So another thing that atheists often hear is, well, you must hate God. Something bad must have happened in your life and you're rebelling. But you were a happy minister, is that right?
I did not have one single bad experience in the ministry. The churches that I was at, the people that I worked with were wonderful to us. They loved our family. Really no bad experiences. The only thing that let me down was God.
Well, what happened? I think I remember you saying something about deciding to learn more about debating evolution. Is that right?
Well, yeah. So I was leading a Bible study in the summer of 2008, small group Bible study, which is very common in a lot of churches. And so we were reading a book called UnChristian by Gabe Kinnaman, and I think from the Barna Research Group. So it's a Christian organization, and they were writing a book about why non-believers have problems with Christians. There were like 6, I think, major things, from being anti-homosexual, too political, judgmental. But the thing that really stuck out to me during that Bible study was that Christians were sheltered. In other words, they never ventured outside their safe little box of dogma and beliefs. And so on my own, the group didn't know I was doing this, but on my own, I thought, I'm going to do some study on my own, because there's no way I could carry on an intelligent conversation about evolution, for example.
And you were a creationist.
I was a creationist. Didn't even hear about evolution in school when I was growing up. I don't remember it. And so we taught
This is the Tennessee.
Yeah.
Home of the Scopes trial.
That's true. That's true. So we basically, believed in creation and never studied it because it was evil. So then I started reading books and just read. And once I started reading, I thought, oh my gracious, there's so much out there. I truly have been sheltered. Now I was still thinking, I'll learn about all this so I can still witness better to people who believe in evolution.
Know your enemy, basically.
Know your enemy, basically. But the more I read, it began bringing real questions to me, and I would venture off and read everything from, at that time, a lot of the new Atheist movement and books by Dennett and Hitchens and Harris and your books as well, Dan.
I remember reading about evolution as a preacher and thinking, oh, so that's what evolution, I didn't know what it actually was. So that's what it is. Oh, so that's what it's saying. Oh, that's cool. Oh, so that's, and after a while you go, wow, there's a good reason why.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it's seeing the light,
It is. It is.
And so you at our convention, you gave us like a list of how many books that you had read during this time?
Probably in a 9 to 10 month period, read probably about 40 to 50 books. There's a whole list that is on Linda LaScola's blog. She has that listing, but it's about 33 pages of books, movies, videos, debates, texts that I read, and I kept up with it because from the moment I started, I tried to balance my studies with Christian apologists as well as non-believers, and so I have a very, very long-running list.
When did you realize you didn't believe anymore?
Well, actually, it happened very quickly, but I really was pouring myself into the studies and reading and researching. So that was 2008. I do know that I remember distinctly the day after Easter Sunday in 2009, so roughly 9 to 10 months later, I knew I couldn't continue to do this. I had to talk to someone. And I had just recently read Dan's book called Godless, which came out in 2008. And I got up the courage to look up the phone number to FFRF, and I called and didn't tell anybody who I was, but I asked to speak with you and told you my story. I said, hey, I'm a worship pastor in East Tennessee, and I don't believe anymore.
And you didn't tell me your name. You just, you made up a fake name, right?
I did. I made up the name Adam Mann. I thought if Adam was a fictitious character in Scripture, it was good enough for me. So I put man behind it.
And doesn't Adam kind of mean the mud, the man from the mud or something?
Yeah. So, but anyway, I told you, that I was Adam. I was going to go by Adam, and I made up an email called Adam Mann, and so that's how we started corresponding. And then you happened to tell me about a project that was going on at that time by Dennett and Linda LaScola, and you put me in touch with them. I was still very careful, though, to reveal my identity.
It was such good timing, you would almost think it was providential, because Daniel C. Dennett, the philosopher, and Linda LaScola, the researcher, they had asked me, do you know anybody who's still a believer who's in the pulpit? And then you call kind of right in the middle of that. So
had to be a God thing.
How do you explain that? It can't be coincidence, can it?
Yeah.
So you participated in this study, and Linda came and interviewed you.
Yeah. We met in Virginia. I drove up. I didn't want her to know where I lived exactly because I was just very worried because, if anybody found out, I would immediately lose my job, put my family in jeopardy in a hard situation. And so I met with Linda. She was very nice, and it was so liberating speaking with someone. She was the first person besides you on the phone that I really spoke with in person about not believing in God anymore. And then it continued from there.
And so then you really were in a tight place, right? Mm-hmm. You didn't have another job, you needed health insurance, you needed your income. So when did all that get sorted out?
Well, that didn't get sorted out basically through Linda and doing the study with Dan Dennett and Linda, and with communicating with Dan. I don't remember who told me, maybe it was Linda or you, about this idea that you and Richard Dawkins had about starting some type of support group for pastors who are trapped. And basically it was the beginnings of what is now the Clergy Project.
And you were very helpful in that. You were still in the ministry. I guess this is a compliment. You were a hypocrite for a while. I mean, you wanted to get out, but you couldn't, right? So you were struggling with all of that. And you helped us with a lot of the technical setup of the forum, the online forum that we had, as Adam Mann. Nobody knew who you were.
Right, so. Yeah, that was, basically I was thinking, I can't really help myself yet, but there's other people out there. It was so freeing to find out that I wasn't the only one going through it. First of all, like when I read your book, but then as I'm hearing about these other people, I realized there's a need out there. And basically I told you, I said, I want to help as I can. I can't be public about it, but I can work behind the scenes.
Well, but at the same time, you were having to be so careful, right? You were having to be hiding everything you were doing.
Yeah.
It must have been kind of alarming.
Well, it was. It was just, I mean, nights of tears and sleeplessness and how do I do something about it? But yet at the same time, I wanted to make a difference eventually. I did a secret interview with ABC, Dan Harris.
That's right.
Where they took us to North Carolina and did the black screen and changed our voice. Canadian Broadcasting Company did an interview where I was on Skype in a parking lot somewhere talking. They changed my voice as well.
So you were really in the thick of it.
Yeah, I was. It was.
So we have to take a break here. Shall we look at the moment when you actually did come out publicly? You spoke at our convention in 2016. Let's look at a little of that as we go to the break. And after the break, we're going to hear a song that you wrote about honesty and not having to be ashamed. What's the name of that song?
Proud to be Me.
Proud to be Me. Stay with us. You're watching Free Thought Matters. I'm Dan Barker with Annie Laurie Gaylor. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this. I'm going to let him tell you his real name tonight. So Adam Mann, can you come up, and then I can start calling you by your real name. Where are you? Here.
That was awesome. That was awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you came. All right. Wow. 8 years ago, I did not even know what a free thought convention was. Seriously. Let alone ever dreamed that I would be speaking at one. For me, the celebration of true independence comes literally today. It comes right now. Now, as I finally find the boldness to openly proclaim to the world that I'm no longer a member of the clergy or a person of faith, I live with reason as my guide, and I am an atheist.
Hi, I'm Ron Reagan, an unabashed atheist, and I'm alarmed by the intrusions of religion into our secular government. That's why I'm asking you to support the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest and most effective association of atheists and agnostics, working to keep state and church separate, just like our founding fathers intended. Please support the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Ron Reagan, lifelong atheist, not afraid of burning in hell.
Welcome back to Free Thought Matters. I'm Annie Laurie Gaylor.
And I'm Dan Barker, and we're interviewing Carter Warden, a former East Tennessee conservative pastor who left the ministry and is now an atheist. And Carter has gone into Studio B, where he's going to perform a song for us.
We love our friends and our family. We don't want to cause them agony. It's a noble mistake. To protect them we forsake who we really are inside. We wrestle with the truth, then we're forced to hide the pain in our hearts and who we really are. Let me tell you who I want to be, 'cause I've got to be honest with me. No more hiding it inside, 'cause I've got way too much pride. I know you may not understand why I need to take a stand for who I believe I'm meant to be. I'm coming out and I'm not ashamed. There's nothing wrong with me and no one to blame. I want the world to see I'm proud to be me. You may not like what I have to say, but each of us must choose our own way. It's a personal choice, and I found my voice. You can pray for me or preach I'm going to hell, but I can't stay inside this prison cell. From the silence I scream, I've got to be free to tell you who I want to be. 'Cause I've got to be honest with me. No more hiding it inside, 'cause I've got way too much pride. I know you may not understand why I need to take a stand for who I believe I'm meant to be. I'm coming out and I'm not ashamed. There's nothing wrong with me and no one to blame. I want the world to see I'm proud to be me. No more hiding it inside, 'cause I've got way too much pride.
Well, so what is your life like now? When did you get out of the ministry?
Well, I finally had to step aside from some of my roles with the Clergy Project, which was voluntary, so I could try to find a job. It took nearly 5 years, but I was watching. I didn't want to move if I didn't have to. my family loved where we were in East Tennessee. And so I finally, a job opening came available at East Tennessee State University in student activities and student affairs. They were looking for somebody that had a lot of large event planning and management and music, concert type experience, which had all those things. And so I was able to get that job, and I've been there for 5 years now and love it.
So you were able to use a lot of the skills you had honed during the ministry to go into a secular ministry, we could say maybe, which is educating students.
Exactly.
Now,
Yes.
I've heard you say you would have loved, you were so tempted from the pulpit to proclaim that you were no longer a believer, but that never happened.
No, practicality wouldn't allow it. I mean, I would think, okay, I would wake up the next morning with no income. What would I do? And I just couldn't. I think I could have taken the shock and lived with the backlash, but I didn't want to put my family in that situation, which is what we try to do on the Clergy Project, is help people in that same situation.
So although you did not come out as an atheist from the pulpit, it's the people in your church now know you're a non-believer, and there have been some repercussions, I take it.
Yeah, some. It actually made the front page of my home paper 3 weeks after I spoke at FFRF, and so that's the way most of the people found out about it. But honestly, a lot of people that were really my friends still are friends. We just agree to disagree.
So, well, what a fascinating story. And you wrote a song called Freedom from Religion, which you performed at our conference there in 2016. So as we go out of the show today, would you play a little bit of that for us so we can hear a little bit of that energy and the drive in your voice?
I would love to.
Well, thank you, Carter Warden, for being with us today. And thank you for watching Free Thought Matters.
Because free thought matters.
Laws of the land say to separate the things of the church from the things of the state. Our founding fathers made the right call. Mr. Jefferson, we hold up that wall. Oh, freedom from religion. Oh, freedom, we want our freedom. Freedom from religion. In this nation, we need our freedom.
Thanks again to Carter Warden for joining us on Free Thought Matters here in the Stephen Ewell Friendly Atheist Studio. Now, here's an extra treat. Let's take a look at an atheist town hall meeting that took place at our 2017 convention in Madison, Wisconsin. The host is the well-known science journalist, Cara Santa Maria.
The secular demographic is the fastest growing in America, yet the religious right controls all three branches of government, and there are no open atheists serving in Congress. Why do you think it's so hard for an atheist to get elected in this country?
There's tons of polling showing we're the least trusted minority in the country. So it's just currently political suicide for you to be open about your non-religious views if you want to get into politics. But I think that's changing as the demographics are changing.
Then do you think that there are politicians who are actually atheists but haven't said that out loud who are serving right now?
Some of them are certainly atheists, but they're just too afraid to be honest about it because they want to get reelected.
Why do you think that 80% of evangelical voters support Donald Trump?
I think a lot of evangelical voters are one-issue voters, and a lot of them voted for him simply because they're against abortion.
Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos has said she wants to convert public schools in America to God's kingdom. And of course, the Trump administration has pledged $20 billion to spread taxpayer-funded voucher schools across the country. How does this make you feel?
As a parent of kids in the public school system, it concerns me on so many levels. One of them being that, is she going to try and put God into the public schooling that my secular kids have to go to? Or is she going to take money from my secular kids' school and put it into funding religious schools for other kids? Either way, it's not a good option and something that I'm definitely against.
What would you do if you found out that a teacher was telling your kids, your grandkids, that the Earth is only 6,000 years old and dinosaurs walked alongside humans?
I would certainly file a complaint with the Freedom from Religion Foundation.
We all know the Earth is 7,000 years old.
According to recent Pew data, millennials are really driving that exodus away from religion. And currently, only a quarter of millennials attend church regularly. Why do you think that is?
I think that a lot of millennials on social issues, for example, LGBTQ rights, they are very supportive of full equality and marriage equality. Religion has historically showed a lot of hate towards those groups that millennials see as love.
Do you think more and more people are moving away from religion because the technology in their pockets allows them to just easily debunk things like creationism?
I think a major reason that people have historically needed religion is to answer questions that they could not possibly know. So I think that technology is replacing a lot of these like mysterious questions. You can just ask Google anything. God isn't as necessary anymore.
Do you think religion is responsible for the majority of wars throughout human history?
I do, and I think you can go through history and show the facts of that. I think it's also behind the major war of our time, which is climate change.
Do you think that a belief in creationism and in the afterlife makes people think that they don't really need to protect the planet?
If you believe that really our time on Earth is just a small little blip compared to our time with God, and that God created the universe perfectly, then we have no real obligation to protect the planet because we're going to go to some paradise, and the Earth is how God wants it anyway, climate change and all, which, like, to me is the logic of a psychopath.
Why do you fight for women's reproductive rights?
One of the greatest dangers of religion in America, to me, is how it's taken control of reproductive health care. Something as fundamental as choosing when or if or how many times to be a mother as a moral question, when only a woman can know how or whether or when she can become a happy mother.
Stephen, why are you proud to be an atheist?
I think that the group that we see here at FFRF is an amazing collection of artists and poets and scientists and writers and some of the greatest minds of the world, and to just be involved with those discussions is enlightening.
And that's our show for this week. Be sure to join us next week for another episode of Free Thought Matters, because free thought matters.